How did that feel when you come out? What did you learn in jail?
I would see when I was there, and I tell everybody, Dimitri, there's a difference between jail and prison. In jail, you still are a person. Once you become a prisoner, you become property. It's very different. And I kept seeing some of the gentlemen arrive, and then they would be released, and then I would see them come back, and I would get on them. I would, Mitchell, the hell, you have any idea how hard we worked to get you out? And they would be, ashamed. They would come back, and I didn't understand recidivism, and they almost looked defeated. So of course, when I came out, the reality really hit me. Keep in mind, I came out, and my wife added me to the lease, and we both got evicted. Nobody wants someone with a felony on there. You start applying for jobs, and no one wants to hire you. So it was one of those things that, keep in mind, the licenses and the businesses that I had, I could not practice those again. So obviously, it was one of those things that I was like, okay, what are you gonna do? You don't have any income. I literally told my wife then. I said, you know what? I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back. And she snapped at me. She verbally slapped me.
I can imagine.
She said, God can make anything happen in one day that you can't make happen in an entire lifetime. And the very next day after she, snapped at me, we got approved for a space, So I spent the first few years, Dimitri, trying to just put my feet on the ground, No one would hire me. So obviously at the time I said, I got to find some kind of work. And one of the things that you don't do in prison is you don't look people in the eye, So try doing sales when you can't look at someone in the eye. That's very difficult. So to me, it was like, okay, I need to get back into sales. And being here in Florida, because this is where I was released to, my wife was here. I started looking for work. No one was saying yes. I saw an ad for a sales commission door to door, And I remember at the interview, I told the gentleman right away, I said, look, this is my situation. If you can't give me work, I'll just go ahead and walk out because this is probably the 20th time that I've tried. And they said, well, wait a minute, hold on. We'll go ahead and we'll give you a shot. And sure enough, that's how I got into the industry, which was interesting because by the second week, I was failing miserably. And it just got to the point that I said, look, if you don't raise your eyes up, if you don't try to return back to society, you're going to remain this way the rest of your life. So it was such a struggle that I don't know what happened. I guess things just aligned, and I kept thinking of my son, and I said, you gotta do something. And then it seemed like everything just aligned again, and I started having effectiveness. So much so, Dimitri, that, and again, this is just fast forwarding. At one point, I was working for one of the contractors. They had 18 sales reps. The sales reps sold 31 roofs between all of them, and here I was by myself selling 34, and they couldn't believe it. They said, let's see you do it again, and I did it again, and they kept saying, he's got to be buying leads. What they weren't aware of was that when I was in prison, I actually taught myself how to write code. I taught myself how to be a programmer. And people laughed that I brought the books back with me, but I brought them with me just as memory, memorabilia to not forget. But when I came out, I said, there's got to be, what kept happening, Dimitri, is that's probably why I connected so much with the trades, I kept looking back, and we're like, why do you always look back? And I said, I'm watching the sunset. And they're like, why are you watching the sunset? I said, because when the sun goes down, I can't sell anymore. And if I can't sell, then I can't make money. I can't take care of my wife and my son.
So hold on, you learned the code just by books. You did not have a computer. You just had a books, and you learned code by the books.
Yes. In fact, you can't have a computer in prison, So
I figured.
What was funny was that, referring back to Mitchell and some of the guys, they would see me studying these massive books, and sometimes I needed to simulate, assemblies and objects and functions moving, but I didn't have a computer. So I would, I had some of the ramen noodles, that's currency, in prison. So I would actually tell them, like, hey, Mitchell, hold this piece of paper, move over here. And I would tell one of the other guys to move. So I was mimicking moving the stuff, and here they are moving pieces of paper because I was trying to see how the code sequences would run. And, at the end of it, of course, they were happy. I can share with you that when I left, there were at least 50 books that I had indexed of this size. And when I left, I said, guys, take the knowledge. I got to go. I wish you guys the best. I left. I forgot something. I came back, and I thought they would have been, deep diving and reading them. By the time I came back, they had already put them in pillowcases, and they were using them to, lift weights. They were using them as weights. So,
how long did it take you to learn a code like that?
the total time that I ended up being there, Dimitri, was 5 years, 6 months, 14 days, or 7 months, 14 days, if I remember correctly. Like I said, I was.
That's more than you spent in college.
Yes. So what happened was when I was cleaning things out over there. That's why I have these 3 books here. I found the book that's actually, ironically, it was covered in dust, and it's called The Fundamentals of Accounting. And this is where I found out that, in fact, I could prove that I had not, stolen $900,000. It was actually a accounting error, and it literally says, a realtor. I should show you this book when I see you. It literally says, broker put the money in revenue instead of equity, and I think this was God sending me a message, and that's why they allowed me to bring this book back with me. But as far as the the programming, when they lock you down, right, you can't go anywhere. And sometimes they would lock us down for 30 days. So what I would do is I would grab the book and I would start working on it. And Dimitri, it's almost like Einstein's theory of relativity. The clock would just run. And sometimes I would look up, and 30 days later they would open the doors and everybody would fly out of there. And I would literally tell them, like, can you close the door? And some of the guys would come around, they're like, we're thugs, we're this, we're that, but you scare us, man. How is it that you're in here 30 days and you're telling them to close the door? And I said, well, that's because I'm not here. I'm actually here because this book is here. So I didn't want to lose where I was left on the code, because it's very interesting to learn that stuff. But when you don't have a computer, you can't risk forgetting where you left it, or you're going to forget where you were in the sequence. So that's
crazy to me. So when you got out and you got a computer, how did you apply your knowledge? How did you transfer your knowledge, right? Knowledge transfer. How did you apply it to real life? How different it was from what you were picturing?
Well, first, I remember my very good, the one individual that did stick with me throughout the whole thing. He took me to Walgreens, and I remember looking at an ATM machine, Dimitri, and I had to scan it with my eyes because I did not remember how to use them. Keep in mind, when I got in the car and I came out and the car took off, I even went, whoa, I went like this because I felt like I was warping. You know what I mean? There's so much to so many insights that one can gain from that. But coming out of there, you really have to realign everything that the way. Even right now, even thinking about all this stuff makes me picture some of that stuff. So much so that I think it deviated from your original question. But yeah, it's a very interesting scenario that you come out, and so if I don't even know how to use an ATM machine, right, I had to relearn everything. And when I got in front of a computer for the first time, my fingers that hadn't touched the keyboard in years, that was interesting because they went right back to where they were. So before you knew it, here I was,
muscle memory comes back fast.
Yeah, blazing on the keyboard. But keep in mind, when no one wants to give you a job, you kind of look at all that skill and you're like, okay, then I guess I can't use it, because you can't apply to be a programmer, And that is what gave birth to this concept that I kept looking at the sun coming down and going, my God, the same problem I'm having, all these guys out there are having. The contractors, the salespeople, they've got families and everything. And I had to think really, really hard for the longest time, because I went to the conferences and I would see everybody and I'm watching everything and I'm seeing everything. I'm like, I want to contribute. I want to be a part of it, but will they accept it or not? So that's when I kept falling back. And honestly, it wasn't until I went to your roofing process conference that I didn't know it was going to be the last year, but I'm glad I did, because that's when everything just, nexused. And I said, you know what, stop making this about you and just go ahead and give them the knowledge.